Welcome to JustWannaQuilt, a research podcast coming out of Tulane University Law School, where we explore all kinds of things, stories about quilting, tools, field trips, maybe some famous quilters stop by, and, of course, a little bit of copyright thrown in just for fun. This is Elizabeth Townsend Guard. I'm a law professor at Tulane University Law School, and I just wanna quilt. So today we're talking to Shelly Weeks. She's part of the quilting army, and she's starting a new thing with her friends called Quilt Your Own Adventure. We talk about silhouette quilts. We talk about staying organized. She uses comic book cards to stay organized. And we just have a nice conversation. I hope you enjoy. And we talk a little bit about how to determine when an image is in the public domain. Specifically, in this case, an octopus. All right, so it looks to me from what I looked at, you're starting a business. Is that right?
Oh, I think that might be a strong word for it, but yeah.
Okay, so what I thought we'd do today is talk about your quilting life and then this new project that you have. Does that sound like a good plan?
Sure.
Okay, hold on. Is there anything else that you want me to add to the list? Are there things about your quilting life we want to make sure we get to?
Well, yeah, I think the only thing specific we were going to talk about was my quest for a public domain image to use.
Right. Oh, right. Domain image to use. Is this the octopus thing?
Yeah.
Cool. For your business. Is it for your business? For your group thing that you're doing? Or just...
Yeah, we were going to do a quilt along. It's kind of like a choose your own adventure quilt, where you pick a background and you pick your own silhouette to applique onto it.
Uh-huh.
And I wanted to use something that wasn't, copyright infringy.
Right. All right, cool. So let's do that. Yeah, and we'll talk more about Quilt Along. Okay, so before we begin, because we're preserving this for Quilt Alliance, I'm going to ask you your name and where you're calling from.
It's Shelly Weeks, and I'm calling from Adel, Iowa.
And I really like the background. So we're on your fabric, how you have your fabric organized. We have to talk about that.
Okay, sure.
Okay. Okay, so tell me, what's your first memory of someone sewing or quilting in your life?
So I don't remember my mom actually sewing, but I remember a lot of the things that she made. So my grandpa had a quilt that she made for him. It was all like browns and creams, and it was tied instead of quilted. But he loved that quilt and wouldn't let anyone use it ever, unless one of the grandkids was sick, and then he'd let you sit with it on the couch. But otherwise, it was like totally hands off. I found out like maybe a year ago, and this is, he had that quilt back when I was like 6. So I found out like a year ago that my mom actually hand pieced that while she was at college, which was, wouldn't have been real meaningful before I was a quilter, but was real neat now.
Yeah, that's really cool. Super cool. And when did you start sewing or quilting?
So I've had a sewing machine since forever. I actually took a sewing class in high school, and then I took advanced sewing, which I failed. And then
why did you fail advanced sewing?
We had to, so it was like, it was a little bit of feminist in me, I think. So it was the boys have to make a shirt and the girls have to make a skirt, and you have to wear it at school. And I was like, I'll make a shirt. And they were like, no. So I just didn't do it.
Funny. I understand that.
Yeah. So I made a quilt top maybe 8 years ago, and I got the whole top done, and then was like, I don't know what to do with this. So I shoved it in the closet. And then 6 years after I made that top, a friend of mine at work was buying a sewing machine on like Black Friday. Uh-huh. And I was like, I'll bring you the scraps from this quilt top I made, and you can use those to practice with it. And a girl that sit near us, my friend Teresa, who's one of the people doing the blog with us, she was eavesdropping and was like, you never finished it? Bring it to work and then come to my house. And she's got a mid-arm, so we went over there and finished it up, and like that was the end of it. I've made like, 10 or 15 quilts in the last 2 years now.
Yeah. Okay, so tell me a little bit about, so you've got what's cool about you've got a brand new blog and you've got a brand new Facebook group. Tell me a little bit about what you're doing with that. It's called, can I say it? Are you cool with it being out in the public, or is it a
Yeah, definitely. Thing? It's called Quilt Your Own Adventure.
And what is that exactly?
Well, so it's really nothing yet. So the inspiration for the name was I made a silhouette quilt. So I took, just a really simple big block background and then appliqued a big, I actually did a silhouette of Calvin and Hobbes from the comic, which is definitely not in the public domain.
Yeah, we can talk about that too. You're not selling it. Are you selling it?
No, I made it for a friend's baby.
Yeah. It's not that. There's a lot of things you can do in the world. It isn't that nobody cares about. So that's probably one of them.
Right.
So yeah. Okay, continue.
Yeah. So we got the idea to do a quilt because Stacy, one of the other girls doing it with me, is she was like, oh, I need to make that. I'm going to do the background different. I'm going to do a silhouette at my parents' house instead. And then we just got the idea that maybe we would try to do a kind of choose your own adventure quilt along where we give people options for a background, have them pick their own silhouette, but still kind of do it all together and walk through the process.
That's very cool. Awesome.
Yeah.
That sounds fun. So a silhouette quilt is the background is solid. And then you tell me a little bit more about what a silhouette quilt is.
So the background is pieced and then you just applique whatever you want in just like a plain black. I have it here if you want to see it.
Yeah, I'd love to see it. Yeah, that'd be great.
Much bigger than a person should probably do for a baby quilt.
Babies grow up, though. Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah, so...
Oh, wait, here, do it again, because when I talk, then I can't see it. So I got to not talk, and then you talk, because then it won't let me see it. It's really dumb. So just say something. Oh, there we go.
So yeah, it's basically just like a couple big pieces of black batik and then a pieced background.
How did you make those?
Well, I I took my lunch break at work and some wrapping paper and a projector, and I just projected it up on the wall and traced it, and then traced it onto some fusible like applique interfacing and.
Wow, that's great. It's a really big. It's like. For those listening, it was like probably half square triangles in different colors of blue. Am I right? And then a gargantuan, like the size of like two babies, right? Like a big, really dramatic black over it of Calvin and Hobbes in a shadow. It was great. That's really cool.
I'm really happy with how it turned out. It's pretty striking for how uncomplicated it is.
Yeah, that's great. And so I'm not sure which way to go first. So you want to do that again because other people saw it, or other people want to do that. They want to do the silhouette. Now, is the silhouette thing something you saw someplace, or did you make it up, or how did you get to that?
I've seen a few on Pinterest where it was like a smaller silhouette, and that was kind of the inspiration for it.
It's really cool. And you asked, this is how we got here. You joined our Facebook group, JustWannaQuilt, right?
Yep.
And you asked one day about a really cool octopus, about whether it was in the public domain or not, right?
Right. So I had bought some fabric at Joann's with that image on it. And then I went to visit my sister in Minnesota, and she had a painting in her living room or a print or something with that same image. And I thought, oh, maybe it's in the public domain just because I'm seeing it in two totally different, unrelated things.
Yeah. Right. And we started to track it down, right?
Right. So I originally just searched for I took a picture of the fabric that I had and then used that image search thing on Google. And I found a place that said, here's this free image you can use. It's in the public domain. And then I found another site that was like, here's this royalty-free image you can buy a license for $10. And I was like, well.
What does that mean exactly? But then we tracked it down. So this is a really simple case of what's in the public domain. So did we track it down so that we knew when it was first published?
We did. So I found a site called, it it was commons.wikimedia.com,
Yeah.
and it's like all the images that they use on Wikipedia and that are in the public domain or have some other license that allows public use.
Yeah.
So I found it on there. I only looked through like 100 pages of images.
Oh my gosh.
And it actually listed it as in the public domain. It said it was copyrighted before 1923, and then it had a link to the original place where they had found it, which was the New York Public Library.
Yeah.
And they had the actual book that it came from, and they said
cool.
the author had passed away in like 1809 or something.
Right. So we're going to do a little copyright lesson. So first, tell me what your thoughts are about what it means to be in the public. What is the public domain? Do you have a sense of what that is or what that means?
Oh, well, I don't know if it's correct or not, I guess.
Right.
But I think my assumption was that it just means that you can use it without needing to pay for a license.
Yeah.
And probably also that it's a thing that you can't copyright yourself because it still belongs to, I guess, the public.
Yeah, that's a really nice definition. So how things get into the public domain vary. So we're going to just talk about old stuff. So old stuff that was published, meaning, and then it's really complicated definition, but for our purposes, if it's in a book, that's published. So a work that was the fancy part, circulated to the public, that there's no restriction on the image, and it was published before 1923, all of those works are in the public domain. So it doesn't matter how old the author is or any of those other things, as long as as long as you see a publication date, 1923, then it's in the public. So if it's a book and it's published before 1923, then anything published before 1923 is in the public domain, and that's a really and then starting next year is very exciting. It will be anything before 1924. So we've had the public domain frozen for about 20 years on books and other published things, and next year's a big year where we have it start to move. So right now, anything before 1923, starting next year, anything before 1924. And if people are wondering why 1924, like how do you know? Starting January 1st, 2019, if the Congress doesn't change it before we get there, it's 95 years from publication. Now, the 1923 and before, that doesn't work. That math does not work. So just before 1923, because it's really complicated. The law is stupid. But starting January 1st, 2019, every year we'll have a new bit of works coming into the public domain. So the next year will be anything 1924, and then the following year anything 1925 and below. And that's kind of how copyright law works. It's for a limited time. And after that, in this case for these works, not all works, but the maximum time for a work is 95 years from publication, starting next year for certain works before 1978. Now I'm going to throw in one more little bit. Yours is a super old work, but just in case people are listening, and we'll talk more about this when we start our copyright school this summer. Just because the work is in 1924 right now doesn't mean it couldn't be in the public domain. That's my other hat, my law professor hat is duration. So we'll talk more about that. There's a lot of works that are in the public domain from 1924 to 1989, and we'll talk about how to look at those works too. But for Shelly's purposes, she found a book that was from, do we know what the date was on the book?
I don't remember the copyright date. I just remember that knowing when the author passed.
And when did the author pass?
1809.
Yeah, so 1809. So so here's the thing. Shelly knows that the author died in 1809. Is 1809 before? So he had to have written the book before he died. That's the way I would have looked at it, right?
Right.
Right. So he definitely wrote it before 1909. And then is 1809 before 1923? That would be the next question I ask. And I would say yes. And so it would be in the public domain. So we can sort of have clues if you don't know the copyright status of the book to get to it. Now, one more caveat, because law is annoying. If it had been a diary that had never been published ever, we might figure it on a different